Hi, my name is Jamie Zimmerman, and my partner for this presentation is Cebastian Roberts. The cultural icon we chose is Jordan Peele. Jordan Peele is an actor, comedian, screenwriter, director, and producer, but most recently known for his directing and screenwriting. He is best known for his work in comedy and horror. He is also married to and has a child with actress Chelsea Peretti. Peele was born in 1979 in New York City and raised by a single mom as his father passed away when he was a child. He went to Sarah Lawrence College to become a puppeteer, but he instead found success in performing improv and dropped out of school to pursue comedy. Some of the improv groups he was a part of were Boom Chicago, which is based in Amsterdam, and Chicago's Second City Theater. Jordan Peele met his comedy partner Keegan-Michael Key while performing at the Second City Theater. The two of them were featured on Fox's sketch show Mad TV. Peele left Mad TV in 2009 and co-created Key and Peele, a comedy sketch show on Comedy Central starring the two of them. Peele founded the production company Monkey Paw Productions, and it's intended to show stories from underrepresented populations. Peele created the comedy The Last OG and produced the movie BlacKkKlansman. He also produced or worked on films and shows such as The Twilight Zone, Hunters, and Wendell and Wild. Peele made his directorial debut with the horror film Get Out, which won an Oscar for Best Original Screenplay. After Get Out, he wrote and directed his second feature horror film called Us, which was highly anticipated because of how successful Get Out was, and was also very successful. Peele's inspiration to make these movies was to address racism. Obviously, with Peele being a POC himself, he first-handedly experienced these racism issues he's addressing, especially with the film and TV industry being predominantly white on-screen and off-screen. And for those of you who don't know, POC stands for Person of Color. In an interview, Peele said that he first felt a sense of racial isolation when taking standardized tests. Since Peele is biracial, in his case half white and half black, he was taught that he had to check the other box when filling out the race question on the test because there was no option for what he was. There was only Caucasian and black. This made Peele feel like an outsider, which made him fall in love with horror and comedy because he thinks they are genres that appeal to someone who identifies with the outsider. Us is a horror film about a family who experiences a home invasion which turns out to be by mysterious, twisted versions of themselves. These doppelgangers, who all wear red jumpsuits, are called the Tethered and are violent and try to hunt and kill the family. Although Us features a predominantly black cast, it is not considered a black horror movie. It is instead a blacks in horror movie, which means that the movie has nothing to do with race and doesn't focus on racial identity. It is just a horror film that happens to have a black cast. This challenges non-black people to accept black people in horror because they are being represented in an equal way as white people would be. It has become a stereotypical cliche that people of color in horror movies usually have an insignificant role and die first or early in the movie. Us challenges that by having all black main characters, giving non-black people a new perspective of black people in horror. In an interview, Peele said that scores of people will walk into this movie waiting for the racial commentary, and when it doesn't come in the form they're looking for, they'll be forced to ask themselves, why did I think a movie with black people had to be about blackness? This makes non-black people self-reflect on the stereotypes they hold and try moving forward to accept and normalize black people being represented in film without it having to be about race. Peele also wanted to use the movie to show that a black family can go to the beach or buy a nice boat, because usually film does not depict black people in that way. They don't show black families living a luxurious and wealthy life. And it gives the notion that only white families can live like that, which is just not true or accurate. As a white person, I recognize how white the film industry is, with the majority of films being created by mostly white people and featuring mostly white people. I believe the film industry needs to be much more diverse behind and in front of the camera, and we need better representation of all races in film. The majority of the world isn't white, so why is the majority of film white? Peele is challenging this normalized white film culture by being a hugely successful POC film creator and featuring a POC cast in his films, paving the way for a better future of a more diverse film industry and culture. Although Us is not about race, it still features subtle Black representation that is more natural and would be seen in everyday life instead of forced racial commentary. For example, one of the characters, Gabe, wears a Howard University sweatshirt in the film. Howard University is a historically Black Ivy League university with about 86% of students being Black. Peele says that us is about the country. For him, that's America because that's where he lives. It is about America's fear of outsiders. In a Q&A, Peele says, "We're in a time where we fear the other, whether it's the mysterious invader that we think is going to come and kill us and take our jobs, or the faction we don't live near, or who voted a different way than us. We're all about pointing the finger." And I wanted to suggest that maybe the monster we really need to look at has our face. Maybe the evil, it's us. Us also holds the message that some people are unaware and take advantage of their privilege while others are suffering. This could relate to race, wealth, or really any minorities. The family in the movie live in luxury compared to the way the tethered are living, but the tethered are similar to them. They're just living an insufferable life. The same can be said about people in America.
Hi, I'm Cebastian. I'll be taking over from here. Just a note for those who haven't seen Get Out, spoilers ahead. Get Out follows Chris, a Black photographer, and his white girlfriend, Rose. They have plans to stay the weekend at Rose's family's estate and finally introduce Chris. Once they arrive at the secluded home, things seem to be okay besides Rose's parents trying to adjust to Chris, but he soon grows suspicious of the underlying racist red flags, which eventually drives him to get out as things take a very dark turn. It is easily recognizable how horror as a genre lacks people of color and proper representation. UCLA professor Tananarive Due would even describe it as a visual genocide. We often view mainstream horror movies that present an all-white cast or include minorities as irrelevant side characters. Looking further into Black characters specifically in horror, we often see them killed off, used as comedic relief, or as an aggressive tool of the main character. So how does Get Out address and combat these racist roles Black people are so often put in? Peele reintroduces Black horror to the audience. Professor Robin R. Means Coleman, in conversation with other scholars discussing Black history in Black horror, describes her definition of the subgenre Black horror. Quote, "These are narratives about liberation. These are narratives speaking to Black folks about their experience and saying how we can reveal and expose oppression, and what that world looks like when we're in charge." End of quote. In relation to the semiotic theory, Peele includes many moments of symbolism and direct connections to Black stereotypes in Get Out to compose Black horror and emotionally manipulate the audience. He clearly uses them to amplify key plot points while subverting our expectations set there by said stereotypes. For example, the teacup Rose's mother uses as a hypnotism device to put Chris in the sunken place, along with the other Black people before him, relates back to the control white Europeans had over Black slaves during the tea trade. The purpose of this hypnotism is to perform a brain transplant between Chris and Rose's white father. We can see this as forcing a person of color to conform to white America or white culture, as this would take away Chris's mental identity as a Black man and replace it with that of a white man. This erases the cultural values, ideas, and traumas related to the experiences Chris faces as a Black man and silences them permanently while maintaining his body. Another symbolic moment is Chris's escape from the chair he is strapped into before the transplant, where he notices the arms of the chair have been dug into by previous victims. We then see the suffering of those before Chris aid his escape as he is able to put the cotton coming out of the arms into his ears, blocking out the hypnotic sounds. This is a visually moving moment because it ties back to Black history, where slaves would pick cotton while imprisoned, but now we see a Black prisoner escape by picking cotton. There are other times where Peele makes his commentary on racism very direct through dialogue and camera work. For example, the annual get-together Rose's parents throw involves the partygoers objectifying and prejudiced comments. Things like, "Is it better?" "Black is in fashion," and bringing up their love of Tiger Woods all come from a place of prejudice. As an audience, we are able to empathize with Chris as the camera shows us what he focuses focuses on during that scene, which is a sea of eyes that sets in a feeling of claustrophobia. We follow his discomfort, his fear, and even his relief. So Jordan Peele, by selecting a black protagonist for his film Get Out, gives his audience the opportunity to challenge their understanding of horror through an underrated perspective, thus provoking change in film culture. If there is one thing I want everyone to take from this presentation, it's that media is a weapon of change. It's a place for perspectives to rally together and speak their mind. So Jordan Peele provides a strong contribution to the fight for representation in the film industry. Sure, people of color have started to get the recognition they deserve, but we still haven't fully reformed the white environment. We can even argue that a lot of movies are white content for white audiences, even when people of color are involved. There is a staggering amount of black characters who are light-skinned compared to dark-skinned, because they have Eurocentric features. There are white writers writing about people of color and sharing unauthentic representation, like Orange is the New Black, which is a bunch of people of color tragedy rather than success, written mostly by white people. People of color are still struggling to find a place behind the camera as well, as according to UCLA's Hollywood 2020 Diversity Report, 14.4% of people of color were directors, 13.9% were screenwriters, and 9% were studio heads in 2019. There is a clear lack of opportunity. The Golden Globes bestow awards to exceptional films and television series, and Get Out was rightfully nominated, but placed in the comedy musical section. Apparently, they misplace films a lot, but this kind of mistake insults the purpose of the movie and further contributes to whitewashing. Jordan Peele, upon hearing the news, tweeted, "Get Out is a documentary." He then followed up with, "The label of comedy is often a trivial thing. The real question is, what are you laughing at? Are you laughing at the horror? The suffering? Are you disregarding what's real about this project?" That's why I said, yeah, it's a documentary. Let's face it, film culture is pretty whitewashed, which only contributes to a cycle of oppression for people of color. The next generation should not grow up disregarding their culture, hating their skin color, and wondering why there isn't a movie character they can relate to. It's best to be critical of the movies we allow to influence us, and ask, who made this and why? What kind of impression are they leaving on myself and others? And most importantly, what can we learn from this? I'd like to point out a few mainstream movies I've seen that I, as a person of color, feel provides representation. I understand my position as a brown person limits my ability to speak on other races' issues, and so please forgive and correct me if anything I've said was offensive in any way. Briefly, why I point out these films in particular. Crazy Rich Asians has incorporated Chinese culture into the style of this film, as well as a strong female lead and message. Black Panther features the vibrancy of African culture and a black Marvel superhero. Rest in peace, Chadwick Boseman. Parasite brings us a thrilling story with universal themes by a South Korean director. Last but not least, Taika Waititi as a director brings representation to Maori people of New Zealand with his amazing films, which also feature New Zealanders. All of this is our film culture's future if we use media as a positive weapon of change. Jordan Peele wanted to give Black people the representation they rightfully deserve, contributing to an open-minded, colorful, accepting environment in media culture. We should follow his lead.